Can we start? Okay, welcome everyone. We can close the doors. I'm Alireza Malehmir. I'm representing EAGE. I'm a vice chair of the Near Surface Geoscience division. So you will see me in a couple of years acting more. So I have a pleasure to welcome you and Dr. Marcin Sadowski from the European Commission, who kindly accepted to present or actually to have this session with us. So you will discover opportunities available from the Commission. I hope we will have questions, discussions after his presentation. But before we move on, so I would like to give you a short bio of Marcin. So Marcin Sadowski, he obtained his PhD in physics, so he's actually a scientist, from University of Warsaw in '94. Later, he worked on semiconductors and their structures at the University of Warsaw and Montpellier. He worked on high magnetic field laboratory in Grenoble. In 2007, he moved to European Commission in Brussels, and he worked as a research program officer there. He's currently head of Raw Materials Sector at the Executive Agency for the Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, EASME. And he's responsible for research and innovation projects within the Commission. So with that short introduction, I welcome you, and the floor is yours, Marcin.
Thank you very much, Alireza. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this lunchtime session. I hope you're enjoying your lunches. People say there's no such thing as a free lunch, so the price you pay is that you have to listen to me. I think some of you, or maybe all of you, have seen this before during this conference, but I will just go quickly through it for the sake of completeness and for those who may not have seen it. The point is that the European Commission has a policy on raw materials, which is called the Raw Materials Initiative. And the important thing to remember is that this policy is aimed at securing sustainable supplies of raw materials for the European industry. And then we will not go into the details. One of the three pillars of this strategy is fostering sustainable supply from European sources. And this is important, but what I wanted to say is that at the back of it always is the industrial aspect. So this Raw Materials Initiative set up a high-level advisory body, which is called the European Innovation Partnership. And this European Innovation Partnership introduced a list of critical raw materials. This list is being updated every 3 years. It is materials which are of high economic importance and whose supply is seen as being at risk. So it does not mean we don't like other raw materials, but these are more critical. The Innovation Partnership also set out a strategic implementation plan of actions to be undertaken in order to implement this strategy. And again, no details. There is a technology pillar, non-technology pillar, international cooperation pillar. But if you look at the topics of the calls that we have published in Horizon 2020, you will see a significant overlap with the strategic implementation plan, meaning our funding is actually following this strategic implementation plan quite closely. Now, the funding comes from the current version of the European Union's framework programs for research and innovation. The current one is the 8th one in a row. All the others were called FP1, FP2, FP5, FP7, and so on. This one is called Horizon 2020. Here you see the funding increase from each successive framework program is getting more money, which we're very happy with. And for the first time in Horizon 2020, there is a special chapter set aside for raw materials. It is part of what we call Societal Challenge 5, which is climate action, environment, natural resources, raw materials, and so on. And there is money for it, something like 500 million for the 7-year period for raw materials. And the way it works, which is what mostly we will be talking about today, is the funding process is that there is a yearly cycle, there is a work program. This is what we call the list of topics that will be funded in a given year. The call is opened, there is a process of evaluation, and then the best proposals get funded. We have basically 3 types of actions: research and innovation actions, which have a strong component of research, as the name suggests; innovation actions, which are much closer to the market, much higher technology readiness levels; and coordination and support actions, which do not do any research and innovation as such. They are more about community building, mapping best practices, and so on. And we are currently in the process still of evaluating the 2018 call, and the 2019 call will be opened in October, I think, and the deadlines for the first submissions are in February of next year. Okay, a quick look. We've been running this since the start of Horizon 2020, so since 2014. We have, in this period, are funding, most of them are still running, some have finished, 56 projects, we call them actions, for a total of 303 million euro. This is a geographical distribution of our beneficiaries, so you see that while unsurprisingly it is mostly in Europe, we also have large parts of the world covered outside of Europe. So we have participation from those countries. A quick look at the projects that we are funding currently by subject area. 2 are dealing with waste, 14 with processing in a very general way, 8 on extraction, 4 on substitution of critical raw materials, and 9 on exploration. And 19 are coordination and support actions, which I mentioned before. In terms of funding, again, by thematic area, this translates as follows. So processing takes over 100 million, 47 for exploration, 75 for extraction, and CSAs, well, you can see they're numerous, but they do not take up a significant budget. So the point is that we are sort of pretty well spread out across the whole life cycle. A quick example of a project that is running. I chose it because it is one of our projects that is not represented at this conference. I have seen several. There is, of course, Smart Exploration, strongly represented. There was Pacific shown. In fact, there is a group from the project High-Tech Alcarb, and Robust is another of our projects that is dealing with exploration, namely underwater or subsea mapping using induced breakdown spectroscopy and autonomous vehicles. We will not go into the details. This is just an example. Okay, so the work programs until the end of Horizon 2020 have already been published. We were publishing them in batches of 2 years, so 18 and 19 were published together last year, plus fuzzy vision of the 2020 work program. Fuzzy vision means the topics are there, but they may still change during the course of this year. So 18 is, as I said, we are finishing the evaluation soon, and the calls for 19 will be opened in October. And this is the column here. So you see that we have several innovation action topics, one of which is called integrated exploration solutions, which could be of interest for you. And then there is the research and innovation action, digital mine, recovery of metals and minerals from sea resources, and voila. So all this will be open for your attention in October. Now, as I mentioned before, at the heart of the whole strategy for a policy for raw materials, there is the will to help industry. So most, if not all, of our, or even all, technological topics have this the sentence in them that consortia should work on solutions developed through industrially and user-driven multidisciplinary consortia. Now, industrially and user-driven, what does this mean? We are not expecting, this is the way some people read it, I know, but we are not expecting large industrial partners to actually be coordinators of consortia. This happens very rarely. It would not be reasonable. The point is that there should be an industrial outlook clearly visible in the proposal, in the consortium, and the role of industry in the consortium and in the proposal should be clear. We have seen, I am sad to say, cases where industrial partners are obviously just there for window dressing. So a large presence with half a person month of work over the 4 years of a project. That is not really what we want. It's not just the name, it is really the industrial participation, industrial or user-driven. The point is, it should all be leading towards useful output. Sorry. A word about technology readiness levels. I am not convinced that this language is spoken by everybody in the whole world. We have taken it up. It has its uses. It goes from very blue sky research at technology readiness level 1 to a product basically at TRL 9. We are positioned in the middle somewhere, so usually research and innovation actions will be at technology readiness levels 3 to 5, and innovation actions would be 5 to 7. This is important in the sense that our expert evaluators are asked to look at this closely. So is the proposal really positioned in terms of technology readiness level where the call text says that it should be? So this is a fairly important thing. And then there is a number of what we call cross-cutting issues, which are not perhaps the main focus of any topic, but which should nevertheless be addressed. They are also part of the things that are evaluated in a proposal, and so you neglect them at your peril. It is, of course, possible to, theoretically, to get away with not addressing cross-cutting issues and still be funded, but I have to say that it is highly unlikely. So these are things such as, well, general statements like achieving the objectives of the EIP on raw materials, but also the plan for communicating the added value of the proposal to communities and society, improving health and safety performance of the operations, and all kinds of things like that. They are issues that should not be related environmental safety risks. These are important things. As I'm sure you all know, I think industry in general, but the extraction industry in particular has, shall we say, poor public image. People do not like the idea of having a mine anywhere near them. And on the other hand, they do like to have all the nice things that are produced with the things that come out of the mine. But we, all of us, have to put in work to explain that this is necessary. So there is a number of cross-cutting issues around the proposal that should also be taken into account. Now, a slightly closer look at the evaluation process. It is a peer review process. That is, we handle the reception of proposals and checking their eligibility and so on. And then the bulk of the work is carried out by expert evaluators from the outside, from among people working in the field. And here again, I appeal to all of you, become an expert evaluator. There are good reasons to do so. One is that, well, it is a service to the community. Of course, as a scientist, you will understand that the peer review system is based on peer review, so you have to do that to keep the system working. And the system is only as good as its reviewers, so we need reviewers. We have the habit or the obligation of changing 25% of reviewers every year. We have to have new reviewers. This is to always have fresh blood, avoid always having the same people evaluating projects. So there is always room for new evaluators. There is also some money in it. It is not that you will get rich by being an evaluator, but there is some money in it. And I think importantly, many evaluators find it extremely helpful, not just being able to see what other people are proposing to do, but participating in the process allows them to understand it better and to write proposals in such a way that they will have a better chance of being successful. So these are the reasons to become an expert evaluator, and it's not difficult. You just have to sign up in the database, give the keywords explaining your expertise, and there you go. So there's individual evaluation by at least 3 experts, usually 4 or 5, of every single proposal. Then there is a consensus group meeting, usually in Brussels, where the group reaches a consensus decision. Then there is a panel review, a meeting of that discusses briefly at a sort of more general level all the proposals submitted to a given topic in order to make sure that they are homogeneously and equally reviewed. And then the process is finalized and there is a final ranked list, and proposals are funded until the funding runs out, funded in order of the ranked list. And this is how it works. So usually, I think now most, if not all, maybe all of our topics are funded in a 2-stage evaluation. The first stage is a short version of the proposal. It is limited to 10 pages. It is evaluated completely remotely by evaluators through computers, and the outcome of the first stage is a yes or no. It's either rejection or an invitation to submit a full proposal, which is then evaluated in the second stage, where the experts convene in Brussels. And again, in the second stage, the outcome is again either rejection or being placed on the ranked list of proposals. And for those happy few, I am sad to say, who are on this list and above the funding limit, it results in funding. Now, what people usually want to know is, what should we do to get a proposal funded? And well, the secret is that there is no secret of doing this. It is really a very transparent and open process, and the rules are all out there to be looked at. And there is no secret. There are best practices, and I have listed a few of them here. And if you look carefully, most of these best practices have the word clear in them. It is extremely important to be clear in your proposal. And I know this sounds very, very primitive, but you would be surprised. I am always surprised. I've been surprised for the past 11 years. How often evaluators read a proposal and say, well, but I don't understand. What are they really planning to do? It is very important to be clear. So I usually suggest to proposal writers to have the proposal read by somebody who knows nothing about it, in order to make sure, if you're writing about something you're doing, obviously you understand it all. We choose evaluators before we have the proposals. This is in order to have the process run quickly. So, of course, we know the topic in a general way, but not all evaluators will be experts in that particular field. So it is important for the proposal to be understandable for a generalist as well. And this is very often not the case. But the first point is, read the instructions carefully. Read the topic. Make sure that what you are proposing fits the topic. This is already sort of a quarter of the proposals don't address this point. They are not really about what we're looking for. Since we started publishing the work program in bits of 2 years, we have systematically had people applying to the wrong year. It is really a good idea to read everything carefully. Address all issues, including the horizontal cross-cutting issues that I mentioned before. Be clear. The evaluation is done in a fairly structured way. That is, there are 3 criteria: excellence, scientific and technological excellence of the objectives, impact of the proposal, expected impact, and the implementation. And so the experts have to follow this structure very closely, and the proposals are well advised to also follow this structure and be clear about the targets, about how we will know that the targets have been reached. Very often these targets are very fuzzy. We will make things better. It is nice if an idea can be given of what we mean by better. Again, a clear positioning in terms of the technology readiness level. The topics always have the expected range of technology readiness levels clearly marked in them, and the proposals should explain why they are now at this technology readiness level and are proposing and how to take it to the next technology readiness level. Be transparent, identify data sources. Well, of course, assumptions, possible hurdles. Possible hurdles are important. If the evaluators think that there is an obvious hurdle that may well stop you and you have not said anything about it, that usually does not end well. Impact. Impact is difficult. If you have read any of the impacts of our topics, you will know it is difficult to address impact. I fully realize this. The impacts are fuzzy. They say things like, move Europe forward, or whatever, help us grow. It's not an easy thing to address in a quantitative way. However, very often people do write about economic impacts that they expect from a successful outcome of their proposal, but it comes out of thin air. We made an analysis of the most frequent errors committed by the failing proposals. So an analysis of the negative comments of evaluators. And by far the majority of these was that the expected impact is not justified in any way. I mean, people say, we will achieve a 25% increase. And this 25% comes out of the air like that without any explanation. So I think it is better to be reasonable, not promise the moon, but explain why you think what you're promising is reasonable. That really goes a long way. So the supporting the impact with quantitative information about the market size, about the possibilities, whatever, this is important. And appropriate measurable indicators go in this direction as well. If you can give an indicator of your possible success that is measurable, this helps evaluators evaluate. So again, implementation, clear and credible interactions and integration between work packages and partners. This is also important. I mean, people very often ask us, is it important to have a partner from Eastern Europe, or from Southern Europe, or from Northern Europe? No, it is not. We have no rules about where partners in a consortium should be from. The consortium should be, well, there are the basic eligibility conditions, which is 3 beneficiaries from 3 different member states, at least, of course. But other than that, the consortium should make sense from the point of view of the proposals. So the partners in the consortium should have clear roles. It should be clear that they are there for a purpose and not because they know the coordinator. It should be clear what they are doing, why they are doing, and what the interactions are. This is what the evaluators are asked to evaluate. More clear things which are, again, obvious, I think, when I see them written out like that, but put yourself in the position of an evaluator. I think this is why being an evaluator helps. You read things and you don't see these clear linkages, and then you are not happy. This is how it happens. So being clear is actually the main message of these best practices. And the number 1 best practice is prepare and submit well in advance. Although experience shows that usually the last versions are submitted in the last 3 minutes before the deadline. And the deadline is really a deadline. It is a computer system, so it is, there is no mercy. The computer shuts down at 1700 hours and nothing more comes across after that. So read well, prepare, submit in advance, and that's it. It's actually quite simple. So today there is an info day in Brussels, an information day where we are presenting these topics. So obviously if you're here, you are not there, but it is being web streamed, so it will be recorded, and Asli has the link, which I understand is available, and you will be able to see. to see that, the explanations of the topics for 2019. The deadline, as I said, is in February of next year. Of other possibly interesting things, there is the Raw Materials Week in November 12th to November 16th in Brussels. This is a week dedicated to raw materials events. There is the EIP conference. There are many things. If you Google Raw Materials Week, you will come up with the full details, and it is, of course, a good place and occasion to network. The updated work program for 2020 should be ready, I think, early next year. And then after 2020, there is the next framework program for research and innovation, which is to be called Horizon Europe, which will start in 2021. And this is still under discussion, so there are no details to be given at this point, but in terms of raw materials, the outlook seems fairly optimistic. Raw materials should still have a place in the next framework program, and probably the way of financing proposals, projects will not change dramatically. There is a request for no revolution in this area, and I think that was my last slide. So thank you very much for your attention, and our hope was that we would actually start now with your questions. This was just an introduction.
We have the floor now for questions, comments. Okay, we have the floor now for questions, comments, and anything you want to share.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's quite clearly explained your process of proposal. Sorry.
Now I can see you.
Proposal, evaluation, and funding. And my question is, at the end, is there a mechanism for two things? One is monitoring the progress, and then is there any mechanism to share the result, like a conference, or to get everybody's result and share the result with other people? That's the two questions.
Okay. So monitoring the projects, yes, we do that. The raw materials sector at the Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, which I'm representing, is a team of 9 project advisors who each have a number of projects they are following, and they follow the projects, monitor them with the help, again, of external monitors, so experts from the outside who usually in a project there would be 2 or 3 formal reviews, and along the way there is the monitoring ongoing of deliverables, reports, and so on. In terms of sharing results, there is a website which is called Cordis on the EU website. And Cordis has a list of all projects and all deliverables from all projects which are not confidential. So these are automatically updated there. That is one thing. Of course, every project has its own, usually website, and its own communication and exploitation strategy. So projects are expected to communicate their activities to the outside world. Not only through writing scientific papers, but also communicating to society in a larger way. We sometimes organize clustering workshops of projects that are working on similar areas. We invite them to come to Brussels to talk to each other, share results, and work together. Sorry?
Open to public as well?
Sometimes yes, it depends. Sometimes yes, but then projects also organize their own conferences very often, and these are always open to the general public. The ones we organize, I admit, are not always available to everybody, because the idea is that they're sort of working meetings where projects discuss between them really ongoing things, and they're not always keen to share that with everybody. It's sort of also things that are not yet ready to be shared, but it depends on the context.
There's further question there.
Yeah, based on historical data, what's the success rate of a proposal to be accepted?
The overall in our program, success rate is something like 14%. But this is an average, so it is misleading because it includes topics where we have one proposal, which then gives a very nice success rate, and topics where there is a large number of, where there's an oversubscription in the sense of a large number of proposals that we cannot possibly fund. So the lowest limit, if you like, the high limit is 100% in a topic, and the low limit is something like this year we will have an innovation action topic where there is a budget of 20 million and there were 50 proposals submitted, of which at most 2 will be funded. So that is a funding success rate of 4%. But usually it is about over 10%.
If I may, I have one more question. Do you accept proposals from countries outside of the EU?
Yes, the Horizon 2020 is open to everybody, in the sense that everybody can participate, or entities from the world over. There is a small catch: not everybody is automatically eligible for funding. So most countries are eligible to be funded under the Horizon 2020 program. Countries that are in the category of so-called rich countries, so the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, South Korea, would normally not be eligible for funding unless in very exceptional cases where this is the only institution that can do this in the world and they're absolutely necessary to be in the project, then it could be. Otherwise, beneficiaries from they're not beneficiaries then, partners from these countries who participate usually have funding from their own country, and they still find it of benefit, just the interaction.
Can we have the mic here? There's a question.
Good afternoon, Marcin. Thank you for your presentation. Please allow me to introduce myself to know who you are talking. I'm EASME and I work for Geoscience in the Netherlands, so you are colleagues. I have 2 questions. The first one is concerning the criteria that you are using to select the project. So talk about the TRL, which is very important. Could you please talk about all the criteria that you are using to select projects? And the second one is, would it be possible to make a summary about the rest of a budget that you have for Horizon 2020 destined for raw materials, and how much do you expect to get for raw materials in the next framework program, Horizon Europe?
Okay, so the criteria, as I mentioned shortly, there are 3 criteria for evaluating projects. Criterion number 1 is called scientific and technological excellence, and this is the criterion under which experts evaluate well, the idea. Does this make sense? Is it going forward? Is it a progress concerning the state of the art? Is it a good idea scientifically or technologically? Criterion number 2 is impact. This is expected impact. This is where we look at if the project is funded and is successful, what will the impact be? Will it be that we have 2 new PhDs and 1 professor who is happy, or will actually industry benefit from this in a visible way? And okay, you can guess which one we prefer. So this is the impact, and the third is the quality and efficiency of implementation of the project. This is especially important now that we practically do not negotiate grant agreements anymore. In previous framework programs, once a project had been accepted because of its value, the details of how it would be working could still be negotiated, the technicalities of project management. Now, a project that is accepted a proposal that is accepted becomes a project as is, practically. So evaluators are asked to look at whether the project management aspects make sense, whether all the partners appear to be there for a purpose, know what they're doing, have tasks, and whether this is something that will work. And these are the 3 criteria. Now, whether the technology readiness level is correct would usually be, I think, under the first criterion: is this a good idea to start with? Is it in the right place? Is it going where it should be going? And these are the 3 criteria. There are no other criteria. In the explanations of the criteria, there are also issues such as the communication, risk management. Risk management is often a thing that is neglected by proposals, but this is also evaluated. This is part of the implementation of the program. If you haven't really looked at risks of what might happen, what might go wrong during the project, then it will probably go wrong, and then that's not good. So these are the criteria. Now I have your next question was about Horizon Europe. We don't know. The Commission has made a proposal concerning Horizon Europe, the next framework program. Raw materials are present in that proposal. In the industrial part, it's called circular industry. So linked with the circular economy, which makes sense logically, I think. But now it's a period where Parliament has its say, the European Parliament, the Council has its say, and after all 3 parties agree, then we come to allocating budget, which is really the important thing. So for now, we know that raw materials should be present. I think the way of thinking is that the circular economy is about making raw materials go in as circular a way as possible. So it recognizes, by definition, almost the importance of raw materials. So I think there is reason for optimism, but no details at this point that we can give.
Thank you again. But the rest of the budget that you have for Horizon 2020 is around 100 million.
The budget for 2019 is 83 million. This has been published. The budget for 2020 is not yet finalized, but it should be I would expect nearly 100 million. Maybe a bit less, but of that order of magnitude, maybe 80, 90, something like that.
2 more questions.
It's very quick. Do you have a limit of time in the project? Like the project has to be finalized in so many years or something like this?
Duration.
This is an interesting question because actually there is no formal limit. I think even if you follow my advice and read all the instructions very carefully, you will probably not find it. In practice, somehow 5 years is the longest that I have ever seen, and I think this has to do with our financial planning cycle, that we cannot promise anything more. I'm not sure this is actually written anywhere, but it is a sort of rule of thumb. The vast majority of our projects are 3 to 4 years. Very rarely, 5 is very, very rare.
I have 2 questions. The first is, can you submit a proposal while you're a peer evaluator? And the second is, if you are rejected in the first round or second round, are you given any feedback on your rejection?
Okay, so you can submit a proposal, but then you cannot be an evaluator. It would constitute a conflict of interest. Evaluators have to sign a clause stating that they have no known conflict of interest, in the sense that they have not participated in the preparation of any proposal submitted to the call in which they will be evaluating. And then, of course, we always discover, or evaluators discover during evaluations, that they do have conflicts of interest they were not aware of when they actually read the proposal and find friends or collaborators or so on. And then, depending, there's a whole list of possible conflicts of interest, and depending on what it is like, we decide whether the person can continue but only look at other proposals, or has to stop working on the evaluation altogether, or what. But if you have a conflict of interest, you are not eligible to evaluate a proposal or proposals. And, sorry, the second was?
Feedback, sorry, feedback.
Feedback, yes. Okay, the evaluation exercise ends in an evaluation summary report for every proposal, which gives points and comments for every criterion. And then at the end, everybody gets this. So yes, they get all this feedback. After the first stage, feedback is now given only to the failing proposals. So if you fail in the first stage, you are told why. If you don't fail in the first stage, you are invited to submit a second stage proposal. And nowadays, we do not give any feedback. We used to send out the evaluation summary reports to everybody, but then at some point this was considered that it was not fair, because some reports gave more feedback than others, and then above all, we try to be fair to everybody. So this is then sent at the end of the exercise. But in the end, everybody receives the feedback. Everybody also has the opportunity. There is a mechanism for filing a complaint, asking for a revision of the evaluation if you consider it has not been done according to the rules. The request for revision concern failures of the methodology. It's not, you cannot ask for a review because you don't agree with the reviewers. Then we say, sorry, our experts say it's bad, you say it's good, that's it. If there are grounds for thinking that something was done completely wrong, the wrong proposal was evaluated. We are talking about human beings. Human beings make errors, they copy paste, they mix up things. If this happens, yes, a review is possible.
Maybe I can ask a couple of questions also. Proposals accepted on the first stage, they will not get feedbacks. Will the evaluators be the same people?
The evaluators in the second stage are usually, but do not have to be, usually a subset of those who worked in the first stage. So I would say, statistically, a second stage proposal will be looked at by somebody who has seen it in the first stage and somebody who has not seen it in the first stage.
And then does the Commission provide, I'm just helping the slides, some sort of brokerage event, so people who have good ideas, but they don't know who to work with in terms of consortium, does the Commission provide such opportunity?
This is what is happening in Brussels as we speak. Sorry, the information day that is taking place today also has a brokerage event, which is a sort of speed dating thing where people register with their profiles before and say who they're looking for, and other people have apps or things and they choose each other and they come and talk. And actually this, we tried this for the first time 2 years ago, I think, and it turned out to be hugely popular. So people talk to each other for a few minutes and then a large number of other people, and then they take it from there, and this seems to work. There will also be a sort of information day and brokerage event during the Raw Materials Week, which will be focused only on raw materials. It has a slightly, usually this is organized by our colleagues from the Directorate General for Growth. It usually has a different format. It's not speed dating. It is people presenting their ideas. But okay, the Raw Materials Week in general is an occasion to network and sort of speed date on your own without an app, if you like.
Thank you, Marcin. I guess we will clashing soon with the session starting. Thanks again. Thanks for those of you attending here. Please join me for a round of applause for this presentation. Thanks.